Hey friends, welcome back to the Daily Dose. We're hitting up day number 91 today. That's right, day number 91. Our next little landmark in our timeline will be day number 100. So we're almost to day number 100. I know we just hit our 90 days, the 90-day mark that we were looking at kind of as a 3-month mark, but we've got our 100 days coming up pretty soon, so let's keep on pushing. So as I said, today is day number 91, and that means we've got Psalm number, you guessed it, 91. We're looking at 2 Samuel, just a few chapters, 16, 17, and 18 today. We do not have any supplemental video material from our friends at Read Scripture, aka the Bible Project. So the only video we've got for today is moi. We do, however, have a link down below in the description that you can click on, and it will pull up a copy of the PDF file that pretty much highlights what the Bible reading plan is that we are following over the course of this year. So if you don't have that, click below. Won't cost you anything, and it'll download that file to your phone. You can take it, print it, save it, whatever is good for you. Follow along with us. So as we go into our scripture for today, we read a little bit about David and Ziba, or Ziba. Okay, so Ziba was Saul's servant initially, okay? And now, since Saul's son Jonathan had died, remember Mephibosheth, that was Jonathan's remaining son, who we read had lame feet, whatever that means. He was potentially handicapped in some way. So with Saul being gone and his son Jonathan being gone, Mephibosheth was kind of the next in line. So Ziba, who was Saul's servant, is now Mephibosheth's servant. Okay? I know that was a lot of names, and I get it. It's hard to remember, but does that make sense? Right? Just follow along with me. You'll get it. So, remember we read that David had fled because Absalom was trying to take over, and I guess David was afraid that maybe Absalom was going to try to kill him and just take the throne by force. So David and his entourage, his workers, his family, his close friends from the palace, they dipped. They're gone. They left 10 concubines there, 10 of his kind of sort of wives, for lack of a better term, to just kind of man the palace and just tend to things and handle the upkeep and everything around the palace while they were gone. So Mephibosheth sends Ziba, his servant, out to David to catch up with David after David had fled. Okay? So Ziba takes donkeys and food and drink and supplies, basically. He's got this big care package that he's delivering from Mephibosheth out to David. Okay? So he tells David that Mephibosheth has decided to stay in Jerusalem because he thinks that the kingdom will be restored to him. You know, because his grandfather Saul had been the king, and I guess he's thinking now, with turbulence going on as far as the power and the balance of power, I guess Mephibosheth, for whatever reason, is thinking that maybe the crown is going to land back in his lap. I don't really know, but that's what it says, okay? So David gives all of pretty much Mephibosheth's stuff to Ziba. He was like, hey, look, you were his servant, you were his guy that, you know, took care of stuff, and now if he is kind of doing his own thing and he's not following along, then everything that belonged to him, it's now yours, so have at it. Then we move into a section about somebody named Shimei, or Shimei, and this Shimei person curses David. Okay, so here's how that goes down. We read that as David and his entourage are kind of on their way, they're passing various towns and you know, moving through the outskirts of some cities and things like that, on their way through to the wilderness. So this guy Shimei jumps out of one of these towns, and he was a relative of Saul. He pops up and starts yelling at David and yelling at David's people, you know, his little band of his little entourage. This guy is just talking smack, right? He is talking trash. He's like, yeah, you know, take that, throwing rocks, saying, you're a murderer, you're no good, you're worthless, you don't deserve to be king, get out of here, you need to get what's coming to you, you're going to be cursed. This guy's just going on and on and on and on, just talking smack, running his mouth, probably telling him your mama jokes, all kinds of stuff, right? It's not good, but David keeps his cool and pretty much just keeps on going. David, has been known to have a temper in the past, but he keeps his cool and keeps on walking. So this guy tells David, as he's, shouting, hurling insults and curses, he tells David that Absalom is taking power because David is a murderer. That's why the kingdom is being taken from David and given to Absalom. So then we read about, now we're kind of going back over to Absalom, back in the city of David in Jerusalem. The scene kind of cuts back over there. And we read a little story about some advice from Ahithophel and some advice from Hushai. Okay? So Absalom inquires. Now remember, this guy Hushai, he had sort of been David's servant. He'd been David's man that handled stuff around handled business, handled things around the palace for David. And David had sent this guy Hushai back to Jerusalem so that he could kind of sort of be like a spy almost in the household of Absalom. Okay, so Hushai makes it back over there to Jerusalem, and Absalom inquires, why did you leave David? It doesn't make sense to me. I'm not buying this. Right? Do you ever see any TV shows or movies where somebody goes undercover and then the person who's undercover finally has a meeting with like the big boss man to do some illegal gun deal or drug deal or whatever, and there's just tension, right? You can feel it. And whoever the big bad guy is that's in charge, he looks at the guy that's, a cop that's undercover or whatever, and you can see he's sizing him up, and you're sitting on the edge of your seat thinking, oh my goodness, is he going to find out? Is he going to be able to tell that guy's wearing a wire? What's going to happen? It's just on the edge of your seat excitement. So I can imagine that with the temper that Absalom had and some of the crazy things he's done, I can imagine that Hushai was on the edge of his seat, so to speak, right? Thinking, is Absalom going to believe me? Is he just going to go ahead and kill me and chop my head off? And, what's going to happen? So Hushai says that he is loyal basically to the king, whether the king is David or otherwise. He says, it's not so much that I'm loyal to David, it's that I'm loyal to whoever God has chosen to be the king, which was David, but now is you. So that's his story, and he's going to stick to that. Now, Ahithophel, if you guys don't remember, Ahithophel had been David's advisor, basically, and now he was Absalom's advisor. He had kind of switched teams, right? When he found out what was going on with Absalom, he decided, well, I want to stay on the side where the grass is green, so I'm going to stay over here because it looks like Absalom's about to take power and keep it, so I'm going to be his advisor now. So you've got Absalom, who is basically in charge, in control right now, kind of the acting king, and then you have got two advisors that are under him. Ahithophel is the advisor that came from David that had been with Absalom for a little while now. And then you've got Hushai, who is the other advisor who just recently showed up and said, hey, I want to pledge my loyalty to you. So you've got these two guys. One of them is Ahithophel is legitimately on the side of Absalom, but this guy Hushai, he's the undercover agent kind of, right, that David sent. So Ahithophel says that he thinks that Absalom needs to do something drastic to show his power and to establish his leadership and to show everyone that he is now the man on the throne, right? So remember the 10 concubines that David had left behind at the palace in order to keep the place up and take care of it. Well, this guy Ahithophel says, you know what you need to do? You need to go up on the roof. You need to go set up a tent that's open in the front, and you need to go and have sexual relations with all of David's concubines up on the roof in plain view of everybody so that everybody can see what you're doing and everybody will know this guy's got the power. He's the man in charge now. And believe it or not, that's exactly what Absalom ends up doing. So from there, We move on to another suggestion from Ahithophel. He says, okay, well, you got that out of the way. You've established your dominance and shown that you've taken over your father's harem, and you're the king now. So now here's what you need to do. Absalom, you need to go get around 12,000 men, we'll say, and you need to go after David. You basically need to take him out and kill him. And that way there will be nobody left to question you, and everybody will be afraid of you, and you won't have any problems, right? People will cower at your feet. So it wouldn't have taken too long probably for them to have rounded up 12,000 men and had a raid party go out and hunt down David. It probably wouldn't have taken too long. But then Hushai, remember, he's kind of the undercover double agent. He says, you know what? How about this? You know that David is wise. David's a fighter. He's a warrior. He's got some very well-trained men with him. And if you guys go at him with 12,000 men, you might win, but you never know. You might not. Something could happen. So instead of doing this fast, let's take our time. Let's go around to all of the 12 tribes and let's gather a large army. Let's gather people from all of the 12 tribes and let's amass a big army. And then we'll go track David down. And when we do, there's no way he'll be able to stand against us, no matter how many little mercenaries he's found out there in the wilderness or whatever, right? Now, that sounds like a good idea. It does. It sounds smart, but Hushai had an agenda behind it, right? So what happens is basically Absalom agrees, and he says, look, Hushai, your idea was good. I think that's the safest play. We're going to go with your idea, Hushai, and we are not going to do what Ahithophel had suggested. So Hushai gets a messenger, and on the down low sends this messenger over to David's camp to warn him about what's about to go down. And because Hushai had convinced Absalom to take more time to round up a bigger army, that's going to give more time for this messenger to get to David, and it's going to give David more time to go make a move and decide what he's going to do. Okay. We also read that Ahithophel ends up going home and hanging himself. I guess his pride is such that when he got rejected, when his idea and his suggestion got rejected by Absalom, he just couldn't deal with it. So he went home, had a pity party, and he hung himself, right? So from there, we go and read about Absalom's death. I won't tell you about that and spoil it. You'll have to read about it and learn for yourself. And then we read about David mourning. Okay? So we're running a good bit over, so I am just going to cut it there, you guys, for now. But I thank you for being here. I encourage you to hop into the Word and read everything that we just covered in detail and find out how Absalom died. Right? You don't want to miss that. Find out how Absalom died. And we'll do it again tomorrow. So thank you guys and gals for joining me. I appreciate you as we go through the scripture kind of as a community. If you've got any questions, concerns, criticisms, whatever, feel free to drop it down in the comments below. But that's all I got for you guys. So thank you so much again for being here. And until we meet again, my friends, deuces.